For my first flight, I've decided to fly from Lynchburg Regional Airport to Brook-Neal-Campbell County Airport, using Lynchburg VOR to find Brook-Neal Airport. So the first thing I want to do is figure out what radial that Brook-Neal-Campbell County Airport's on. And you go to your chart, and you draw a line from Lynchburg VOR to Brook-Neal-Campbell County Airport, and it looks to be on about the 128-degree radial. And then what we'll do is, when we leave Lynchburg, we'll fly direct to Lynchburg VOR and then turn on the outbound 128 radial until we find Brook-Neal-Campbell County Airport. All right, we're all set up to go now. I have Lynchburg VOR tuned in to both NAV1 and NAV2 radios. The NAV1 Omni head I have set to fly directly to Lynchburg VOR, and then I went ahead and set the 128-degree radial into NAV2. It's not necessary to use both Omni heads to do this. You can do it with one, but I find it so much easier to use two of them to do it. So let's take off here and go ahead and fly our trip. All right, we're rolling now, and if you notice, the NAV1 needle is going to start to move a little bit because the runway heading here is not the same as the radial that we're on. So you see it's starting to move a little bit. So what we're going to do is adjust the OBS just a little bit. And then we're going to fly the nav heading here. I'm going to let the autopilot fly it just to be more precise. All right, now we are tracking to the Lynchburg VOR, or Lynchburg VOR. And as we get close to the VOR here, I'm going to set the heading bug to about 129 or 128. And then as the Omni 2 needle comes into center, I'm going to go to heading mode and start the outbound leg. All right, we're getting close to the station, and you should see the NAV2 needle starting to move here shortly. We're going to go ahead and switch to nav mode. And there's our needle, just moved. And what we need to do is come around till we get that number 2 needle lined up. But you notice that the to from indications went from to to from. We're now tracking away from the station. And I set the heading about 125. We'll go about 120 till we start getting that needle coming in. I'm going to go ahead and change the nav1. Here comes nav2 tracking in. So we'll try to get that lined up center before we start messing with anything else. So what we're doing is we're approaching the 128-degree radial. We're getting closer to it. We'll start our turn. I don't want to overshoot it. And we're almost there. Go ahead and rotate our nav1 around to 128. And now since we're so close to it, what I'm going to do is go ahead and switch back to nav mode and let the autopilot fly it. It's taking us to the left a little bit to intercept it. And we're about there. Now all we have to do now is fly this radial until we find the airport. And if you notice from the map, we're not too far from there. In fact, if I look outside the window here, I can see the clearing that the airport is at. The airport is plainly in sight now. We have arrived, almost. We are crossing the road and the railroad tracks. And the airport is dead ahead. And we're preparing to cross over the airport. I'm going to end this one right here. The only thing left to do here is to take it off autopilot and land the aircraft. Something else you can do with VORs is locate your position. Now, if you're not quite sure about where you are, you can use two VORs to triangulate your position. Now, I've flown my airplane to a point, and I'm using a low altitude and route chart rather than the sectional this time because it's less cluttered and easier to see. So what I'm going to do is VOR1 is tuned to Lynchburg Vortex, and VOR2 is tuned to Montebello VOR DME, which is this one up here. So what you want to do is, first of all, you want to find out what radial I'm on off of the Lynchburg Vortex. So I'll turn the Omni bearing selector until I find out what radial I'm on. Now you want to make sure that the to from indication is showing from. So currently I'm on about the 058 degree radial. So what I want to do is I want to go down here on my chart. I want to draw a line from Lynchburg Vortex toward the 058 degree radial. So I need to find the 058. There's a 053 right there. So it's probably right in the neighborhood of right there. So you just draw a line on your chart. And then you want to go to your number 2 VOR here. And you want to find out what radial you are off of from the Montebello VOR. So you turn your Omni bearing selector until you center the needle. And there it is right there. And it looks to be about the 125 degree radial. So again, you go back to your chart and you draw a line from Montebello. That's the 120. 125 is going to be about right there. So you want to draw a line about the 125 degree radial. And we'll say that's about it right there. Now where those two lines intersect right here should be about where your airplane is. So we're going to switch back to the moving map chart and see if that's where we are. So here we go. And that's pretty close to where we are. You see my little airplane right here, and you see where our lines intersect right there. So we are pretty darn close right there. All right, for our last flight, what I'm planning on doing is flying from Lynchburg, and we're going to fly down to Danville using Victor 469er, which this is a Victor Airway. Victor Airways are airways that run between VORs. For high altitude, you have Jet Airways, which are designated on charts with a J instead of a V. So what we're going to do is we're going to take off from Lynchburg Regional Airport. We're going to fly to the Lynchburg Vortex, and then we're going to track outbound from the Lynchburg Vortex on the 192 degree radial. I've already set up my NAV1 Omni head for the 192 degree radial. And what I've done with NAV2 is I've tuned it to South Boston VOR, and I'll explain that a little bit later, but we're going to go ahead and take off here and get started on this flight. All right, we've taken off and we're climbing to a cruise altitude of 2,000 feet. We're currently flying toward the Lynchburg Vortex, and what I'm doing right now is I'm just flying runway heading. And I'm going to fly the runway heading until I get close. And then we're going to turn to a heading of about 092 or thereabouts until we intercept the 192 radial out of Lynchburg Vortex. And now I'm going to switch to nav mode. Now that it's much more stable, we'll line up on it and we'll start flying our course toward Danville. Overshot it just a little bit, but we're coming back into it. The more you do this, the more proficient you'll get at it. Sometimes you don't even want to fly directly to the VOR. You can intercept the radial that you want to fly from wherever you are rather than flying directly to the VOR and then outbound. You can intercept it en route along the way. What I'm going to do is pause the recording here and let us get a little bit closer, so we'll see you in a minute. Alright, we're back, and you see that we are currently flying Victor 469. That's the 192-degree radial out of Lynchburg Vortac, and we are flying toward Danville, Virginia. Now what I'm going to do is, I showed you earlier how you can find your position using two VORs, and we're going to do the same thing here. If you look, before you get down to Danville here, you see Java intersection, J-A-V-V-A. Intersections are actually intersections between two VOR radials. Some of them are named, and some of them are not named, but this one is named. Most intersections are a 5-letter word, but it's not actually a word. It's something close to a word. But anyway, here's Java intersection. And what it is it's the intersection of the 192 radial out of Lynchburg Vortac and the 300-degree radial out of South Boston. So we're going to tune in South Boston 110.4 into our nav2 radio. And we've got the 300-degree radial, or 300-degree radial, dialed into our number 2 Omni head here. So when this CDI, this course deviation indicator needle, becomes centered, we will be at Java intersection as it's seen here. So I'm going to pause again and let us get a little closer to that, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Alright, we're starting to get close to Java now. Our course deviation needle is starting to come in. When it gets lined up, we should be directly over Java intersection. And this is beneficial because if ATC asks you to report over top of a certain intersection like Java, say they say report over Java, when you need to know when you are over Java so you can let them know. And this is a good way to do that. We're still flying the 192 radial on our number 1 Omni there, and the number 2 Omni is set to the 300-degree radial off of South Boston VOR. And our course deviation needle's coming into alignment here. And at this point, you can call up ATC and let them know you're over Java. Now, I'm going to switch from South Boston to Danville VOR on Omni 2. Alright, and we get a from indication. Let's scroll around and get a to indication. And then line it up on the radial. And we're about the 192 radial heading to South Boston, so we can track this. We no longer need to track the number 1 VOR since we're closer to Danville VOR. And we can just fly this until we get to the airport. I'm going to leave you at this point now. I hope you've learned something from this VOR navigation tutorial. Stay tuned to Easternhops. Hopefully we'll be getting some VOR navigation flights in. And thank you very much for watching.
I could be a rambler from the 7 Dials. Don't pay taxes 'cause I never file. I don't do business that don't make me smile. I love my aeroplane 'cause she got style. I'm a treetop flyer.